Let's take a look now at some of the causes of those common networking problems that we've been discussing. And if you do have an improper IP configuration, then it most likely lies with the DHCP server itself. Bear in mind that almost every environment takes advantage of DHCP to automatically assign IP address configuration to the clients. So if you are getting an address configuration from the server and it's incorrect, then it is a problem with the server. So you do need to make sure that, of course, the scopes of addresses that have been defined are correct, and that there aren't any addresses that are conflicting with other statically assigned addresses, that there are no typos in the configuration, things like that. Because obviously if you get, let's say, the incorrect default gateway just due to a typo, you've lost all inter-networking capabilities. You'll still be able to communicate on your own LAN, your own subnet, but nothing beyond that. So obviously just verify the configuration of the DHCP server itself. And similarly, VLAN configuration is very common these days as well, wherein an administrator can just define subnets using software configurations on the switches themselves. So perhaps you've been placed on the wrong VLAN, or the system you're trying to connect to has been placed on the wrong VLAN. So something else, of course, that you need to verify. Port security, confirm any kind of MAC address filtering and or port authentication. Make sure that everything is correct and appropriate there if you are using it. And improper subnetting is similar to the VLAN issue. If somebody did not correctly calculate the size or the boundaries of your subnet, it's entirely possible that the system that you believe you should be able to contact is on the wrong subnet. So you cannot contact it anymore. So again, you have to verify the configuration of what subnets have been implemented in your environment. Component failure obviously is something that it's going to clearly prevent all kinds of communications, but it certainly depends what has failed. If it's the router, then obviously you're going to lose all internet connectivity and internetworking connectivity. If it's the DNS server, you're going to lose name resolution. If it's your own adapter, then it's just you that's the problem, and it's very isolated. But obviously any component can fail anywhere along the way. Incorrect operating system route tables. All Windows systems maintain sort of a default routing configuration so that they are aware of just the necessary systems that they need to be able to reach to be able to route commands correctly. So you can use the route statement or netstat-r to validate the routing table. So there may have been some static routes that were entered into your table, which simply inform the system, this is how you get to that destination. So if that is incorrect for any reason, or just something has changed and the table has not been updated, then obviously it's out of date. So you can use the trace RT, known as traceroute, to find out how your packets are moving from point A to point B to point C. And it literally reports back, here are the routers that had to be crossed to get to that end destination. So you can verify whether or not it's correct. Now, bad cables are just like any kind of bad component. If the cable itself has failed, then it's pretty much just swap it out for a known good one. So hopefully you have a cable tester and you can test, of course, any cables along the way. But any kind of permanent link cables are usually fairly reliable, but something that you have to sort of crawl through the walls to get to is going to be a bit of an issue. But you'd still, you need to test them if you're really trying to run down a problem that is difficult to trace. So always, of course, test your cables and make sure that you know that they're good. And firewall configurations, like anything, they can end up being misconfigured, changed, not updated correctly. If it's a firewall that's a hardware appliance, there can be any kind of hardware failure there. If it's a host-based firewall, of course, there could be any kind of software failure. Misconfigured network interface cards, routing or switch issues certainly are going to cause problems. And again, with incorrect routing, you're going to get destination host unreachable errors. Issues with the switches will usually only prevent communications within your LAN. But obviously, if the switch has gone down and your router is clearly in the same switch, then you're not going to be able to get to your router either. So, you know, there's going to be any kind of problem there. And of course, your own network interface, if it's been misconfigured on any value, you're going to have problems there as well. And DNS or DHCP failure. Again, all Windows environments rely on DNS and DHCP, of course, to assign the IP address configuration. If either of those have failed, you're certainly going to encounter errors. Now, DHCP, if that one goes down and everybody already has a valid address, it might be down for a while before you notice it, because your lease duration for an IP address can be 7 or 8 days, maybe more. You might actually not notice a DHCP failure for a little while. It depends on where everybody is in their lease cycle. But DHCP sometimes can go down and come back up without anybody noticing it. Now, misconfigured host file. If you are using DNS, then you probably don't refer to your host file very often. But what you can do is that if you have a few systems that are particularly important, you always want to make sure you can resolve their names. You can enter them into a static text file that has the resolution of this name to that IP address locally stored in your own system in what's known as the host file. If then for any reason your DNS server goes down, the host file can still resolve those names. But changes will probably still occur. And as they do, you need to manually update the host file on any system that's using it. So any kind of misconfiguration there will obviously cause problems. IP version 4 versus IP version 6 misconfigurations. Newer systems, newer applications, newer environments may be migrating to IP version 6. And if that's the case, there could be any kind of misconfiguration with respect to communicating over that protocol. Maybe there's a system somewhere in the mix that does not support version 6. If that's the case, you need some kind of translation implementation to be able to interoperate with both protocols. Now, the default configuration in Windows since Vista has been that both protocols are present and enabled by default. So again, it's usually just a matter of determining which ones need to have which protocols. So you can disable either of them at any point. You cannot uninstall or entirely remove them, but they can be turned on or off appropriately. So you just need to make sure that whichever systems require that protocol have it enabled. So lots of various causes for networking, and you certainly can end up spending a lot of time troubleshooting network problems because there are so many areas that can cause problems. So it's something that you continually need to stay on top of to make sure that your environment remains as healthy as possible.